We are live, and yeah, we are going to talk about the three um, compilation movies which summarize uh, the original Mobile Suit Gundam TV series.
And I should point out, ended up popularizing Mobile Suit Gundam generally. This was when Mobile Suit Gundam. This was when Mobile Suit Gundam really became a popular phenomenon in Japan and basically guaranteed a sequel. And I should point
All right.
out, and we need to eliminate that echo.
Yeah. The echo is just me checking whether just playing the live stream to see whether I can actually hear anyone. All right. So a Toad Agent,
Hello?
given that I,
Yes.
what did you think of the three films? Do you get what all the hype about Gundam is? Why it's a big thing or something? After watching this,
Yes, I do. I do. Well, this is like my first time watching, right? Because I was always put off because Gundam. I always saw Gundam as his way of just selling toys to kids, basically. So I was always put off by that. But actually, after watching these three films, I was definitely surprised. I was pleasantly surprised. Yeah. These are three really really great films, especially the third. The first does have its problems, and we can obviously talk about that. But yeah, hopefully I answered the question.
another question that I have, given that you have only watched the compilation movies, so a lot of people say that, for example, I've heard that anime snobs say that oh, if you are going to get into Gundam, like you don't really need to watch the TV series. You can just get it by watching the three compilation movies. Did you kind of feel issues with the pacing? Like you were talking about the first movie, for instance. Like, did you feel like a lot of content was cut out and like you were out of the loop some of the time?
Yeah. I'll tell you what it reminded me of. It reminded me a lot of Gunbuster in a way, in terms of how characters quickly overcame like their emotional issues. Very quickly in
Isn't
these
that
films.
the truth?
But, obviously, it's a compilation film, right? And I sort of went in knowing that anyway, so that's just how I sort of apologized for it, I guess. but
Yeah,
but yeah, you definitely did notice it.
Yeah, looking over it, they do sort of like skim through Amro's issues a little bit. Like, there's a whole period where Amro basically is almost catatonic with stress, and he just doesn't want to go out into the Gundam. And they seem to skip over that, and then they later get to the point where. Yeah, they do have the famous scene where Bright comes in and he goes, "Why aren't you going into the Gundam?" And he's like, "I don't want to pilot the Gundam anymore." And Bright slaps the shit out of him and says, "I don't have time for this."
Good.
So, Lou, what about you? What did you think? Because it seems like you are I guess you didn't really like the films. What happened?
Just I grew up on the original series. I lived like out in the country, and I had a really big like satellite dish. And you'd think like, oh, super big satellite dish, you get a bunch of channels. But it was like back in the day before internet, and so you only got like a couple channels, and you only got like, I don't know, you got what you had at the time. And I had Cartoon Network, and it was fucking Gundam, and I didn't like it as a kid. So I don't know. When I was a kid, I didn't like the art style and stuff. I think now as an adult, I like the art style more, but the animation is so bad. And when like in the first movie, when there's like a car on the road and he's like driving in the middle of the road and stuff, I'm like, what's going on? But that aside, I don't know. I just didn't really like the movies overall. And Amuro's worse than Shinji.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is something we could get into, because Amuro sort of is the prototype for what the type of character Shinji would later codify, but he's very different. He has a lot more pride and he's a lot more bratty. Eventually, he gets to the point where, like, all his pride is tied up in the Gundam itself. And so when the Gundam is threatened to be taken away from him just as like a military war measure, he completely freaks out and he just gets in the Gundam, takes off,
We're
and
getting ahead of ourselves, but yeah.
hides in the desert, and then like lets the sand cover the Gundam, and he's just like living in the desert off of cans of meat. And he has no idea what he's going to do next.
I'll get into that when we get to the second movie. You don't even. I can rip into that damn scene.
Yeah. So basically, when Shinji is told not to get into the robot, he just runs away. When he's told to get in the robot, he just runs away. But when Amuro is told not to get into the robot, he runs away with the robot.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, what about you, NPC? Did you get enough time to watch the 3 movies, or have you only seen the TV series? What is it?
I had plenty of time to finish everything. Yes, what was your question?
So, I guess comparing the two in terms of, so for example, the animation, would you say that you saw some improvement in the movies as opposed to the TV series?
I believe there was. Granted, I'm not the best at paying attention to finer details, but I watched the original series just before I watched the movies, and the same thing sort of happened in the series.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry that you had to watch both of those.
Oh, don't worry. It wasn't a problem for me, but yeah, the animation just gets more fluid later on. Like in the beginning, some of the animations, especially the Gundam, just feels a bit. I don't know. I'm not very familiar with it, but because I haven't watched much. But maybe it feels too super robot-y. You know, it feels almost too human the way some of the animation of the Gundams is done.
Totally got that feeling as well.
Yeah, and I think that sort of is alleviated a little bit, at least noticeably, in my opinion, towards the end of the series and in the movies. They just sort of streamlined it, I guess, and try to take out some moments that might damage the immersion.
Yeah, it definitely helps that you have the shift to space battles.
Yes, that is definitely true. That might be. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that might be one of the biggest reasons, because you have these robots moving around on Earth, and they're moving like humans, and you know, we live on Earth. You know, we know how a giant robot, or at least, well, maybe not back then, but we know now how something like a giant robot would move on Earth. You know, we can kind of infer that, but not really necessarily in space. So that might be a reason why the animation in space felt more natural, or less unnatural, I should say.
NPC, did you feel like the mecha designs looked like toys to you?
See, this is going to be a running thing if you ask me questions about the show. Is I granted it a lot of patience, and I am excusing a lot of its faults, quote unquote, especially if you compare it to modern anime, where, like, yeah, you could say the animation of the Gundams sort of looked a bit like Legos, You know, like Lego constructs.
Oh
But
yeah, there was no
Want to say the
Yeah.
date this was made? Do you guys want to say the date that this was made?
Not 1979, and then the movies came out like 82, 83.
There you go.
yeah, yes, it did look a bit toyish. You know,
Yeah,
so
which I'll say was actually forced upon the designers. Like, of course, they wanted toy tie-ins because that's what all giant mecha robot stuff was at the time. The toy tie-ins didn't end up selling very well, but what did end up selling well down the road were these model kits that they just was basically like almost complete happenstance that they decided to make.
Before you get into the model kits, dude, about the toy lines, dude, in the in the first movie, there's that scene where they're like, "Look, the fighter jet goes inside the tank, and it goes inside this other thing." I'm like, dude, that is a toy. I was like, that is a toy.
Oh, completely.
Oh yeah,
They actually take out some of the more toyetic designs in like the third movie. There's like this big, ridiculous-looking G fighter thing that goes over the Gundam, and they completely discard that thing in the third movie. Like, doesn't show up.
Yeah, God, there was like a line from the first film where if you watch the dub, like the English dub, it's hilarious. There's like this line that goes.
We need to
like,
talk about the Jap and the English dub too.
Oh yeah, definitely. It says something like gun tank and gun
cannon.
Yeah, gun tank and gun cannon follow Gundam. It was like so funny. It's
That's
like,
great, dude.
I was just waiting for like a trademark to come up at some point. It was. But yeah, there are lots of these sorts of points. Yeah, like especially when like you first see the Gundam, like it looks a lot like a toy. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. And yeah, like obviously, as you said, the animation isn't great. You don't really get a sense of weight or presence, especially I think on the planet scenes where like the robots will just like topple over like humans and stuff. Yeah, it feels very it feels like toys are fighting each other basically. So yeah, I do agree.
Oh god, you guys are ripping into this. Man, I like the sword battles.
It's dated, but the thing I'll say for it is there's a little overuse of stock animation, but what it does do is when they have battles, there's a lot of actual movement going on, and they just sort of take the view of
it is bad. Animation is bad, but
they basically take the view of they don't care so much if they're going off model. They're going off model all the fucking time. But what they do try and
sometimes they look ridiculous.
Oh yeah, there are a zillion screen caps people have taken from the TV show.
I can imagine.
And they focus a little bit more on fluidity, and they do focus, I think, fairly well, especially early on actual like military style coordinations of battle. Like there's the one where Shaw just like is able to break in without any mobile suits, and that completely throws the Federation.
Don't even go there. Don't even go there. I will rip. Oh my god, that was the worst scene, dude.
Why?
That was the worst scene.
Why?
Are you kidding me? Dude, he's literally... Dude, oh my god, that whole scene... Okay, I'm going to go into it right now. We're in the first movie. Okay, look, dude, that scene... First off, why are you going to go into the fucking military complex by yourself, you crazy fuck, okay? And then
because
past
it's
that...
unexpected.
Okay, past that, he gets in there and they're like, there's an enemy in the base, Everyone has freaking machine guns. They're all shooting him. There's like 1 million bullets, dude. He's not going to hit. There's 1 million bullets. He's not going to hit. Dude. What's going on, man? And then he throws a grenade at a wall, blows up the wall, throws a grenade at the other wall. Like, how do you? I don't know, dude. That whole scene. Just cut that out of the movie. Just cut that out of the movie.
Blows up all the spaceships. I mean, they want to do that in order
Oh
to
man, it was so bad, dude. It was so bad.
in order to establish how Shaw is
Oh my god, it was
this
so bad.
very unorthodox and aggressive tactician.
Yeah, so unorthodox. Gonna run into 50 million machine guns. Great, so smart.
It's all right
there's
when you have
Fucking
Kohaman.
genius tactician.
I mean, one of the things which I did find funny sometimes was how, the giant mechs would just sneak on people and be used as stealth weapons. I don't
I don't know
know,
how that's possible, but yeah, man. Oh my god, that scene.
but all right. So, Road Agent, you said you had some problems with the first movie. What were the problems you had?
Yeah. I mean, I think they've all like a lot of the big problems have already been talked about. Firstly, it's sort of like the big tone shifts over over a very short period of time. That sort of that can throw you out. And then it's I don't really mind the animation. Like there were plenty of areas where the animation was poor, but that wasn't like that's never too much of a big deal unless it's like lazy or or something. I guess yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'll think of something later.
So,
Yeah, one thing I'd like to point to, Tomino, when he was writing this, talked a little bit about he had memories of World War II, not like actual memories, but like he knew the World War II generation, like in that time space.
I really did
where
like the strategy in the battles and stuff. It seemed like the ammo was a concern a lot and stuff. I liked that.
Yeah, ammo is a constant concern. You do have like there was the other battle where
Logistics.
logistics is a big deal. They I like the one battle where Amuro basically has to get back to the White Pace in time, and while they're descending down to Earth, and he basically fails, and
That was awesome. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That whole scene was sick. I loved that whole thing.
Mhm.
That whole scene is, I think, probably the best part of what I saw.
I wouldn't go that far. But it's a nice scene.
What I saw, I only saw the first two movies, so
Oh, okay.
yeah. So
Anyways, one of the things that the show and the movies go out of their way to show is there's a lot of common humanity on both sides. Like you'll see like a Xeon soldier, and he'll come around, and there's like all these bunch of orphans, and well, let's say like this little
Oh yeah,
mother
the
with her
orphans.
kid. Oh, there's like a little mother and her kid, and they'll drop off like little supplies for them. But unfortunately for him, that brings him close to the range of the Gundam, and they notice one another, and the Gundam has to shoot them down. And there's a lot of little scenes like that. Rambaral tries to enlist Sayla to his side, or at least talk to her because he recognizes her as Artasia Daikun. And then
a lot of people try to do that for her.
yeah, and they all end up suffering and dying as a result.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's this running thing where there's a lot of common humanity there, but it often like gets themselves killed. But at the same time, it's not really directly condemning anyone for it, but it's like more like showing the consequences that happen when it's done improperly.
Yeah. I think a big example of this is oh god, what's his name? But he lets on like a spy aboard, and she's like the older sister to like her younger sister and brother, and she is like stowed away onto White Base.
Oh, Mihar. Well,
Yeah. Yeah, go on.
Well, Miho's her own thing where and that interacts a lot with Kai, and I guess we can start talking about some of the characters now. Amuro is, of course, the main character. He's a little bit of a brat at the start. He's
A little
basically
bit.
he's basically this very nerdy, tech-obsessed guy. Doesn't pay too much attention to things around him, and he's just sort of like gets forced into the military life, and he has a lot of resentment, especially towards Captain Bright, as a result, because Captain Bright is just like, you could have done a little bit 0.2% better. Get on it. And Amuro is just really resentful, and he goes, in the dub, he goes, one of these days I'm going to end up decking Bright. Like, very angry at him. But then you also have Kai, and Kai's... We didn't used to have a term for it, but thanks to Vox Day and other people like him, we have the term Gamma. And Gamma perfectly describes what Kai is. Kai is constantly criticizing others. He's constantly
Why don't you
pretending
explain
to be
what
above
Gamma
it all.
is? Because I don't know what it is completely, and I'm sure there's people in the audience that would love to hear what it is.
Okay, it's like a whole big theory of like where people sit on the sexual hierarchy and all that. And Gamma is someone who basically is at the bottom but doesn't want to think that they're at the bottom, and thinks that they're so above it all and so above everyone in general. And they're sort of resentful at other people constantly, while at the same time pretending that they're better than them. It's like the aggressive nerd that hates the jock, like that type.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
is
where
Kai
does
that
Sigma
bad?
fit
I
for
mean,
this?
yeah. Sorry, Cody Agent.
No, I was just talking shit. Don't worry.
I guess.
But
Yeah, go on.
But yeah, Kai can often be like this really insulting
I like
character.
Kai.
He's constantly making fun of everyone. There's like scenes where Amuro's like risking his life and nearly dies, and Kai goes, "Oh, that's
Good.
so horrible," and
Good.
then Bright just throws him to the ground, and he says, "Next time you do that, I'm throwing you out the
What a
airlock."
bitch. What a bitch Blight is. Dude, that guy, what a cuck, dude. What a cuck that general dude is. Like, Armoro. Like, dude, just put someone else on the damn Gundam. Put someone else in the damn Gundam. It's not hard. This child figured it out. Okay, real quick, do you guys understand this entire series is built on a fucking McMuffin?
New
This
type.
entire series is built on a fucking McGuffin, okay? But I call them McMuffins, but it's a McGuffin.
MacGuffin.
And I'll tell you what it is it when Amuro's escaping and the car goes into the garage and explodes and everything gets destroyed, okay? You know, the only thing that survives is the top secret
manual.
notebook for the Gundam, okay? The magical notebook that allows Amuro to fucking sit there and take 1,000,000 shots in his amazing secret impenetrable Gundam and then just shoot people, okay? But
I think the explanation that they give is that he's a new type.
he's a new type.
Well, yeah,
NPC, could you explain?
Just put a fucking adult in that damn Gundam. Put an adult in that Gundam.
Well, that's what Bright talks about doing, and he was going to do.
Like,
Because
are adults literally retarded in this universe? Are
No,
they literally
like-
retarded?
literally,
anime.
if you paid attention, they went over the fact that it's all trainees on this.
I get it. I know there is a bit of implied things.
Like Bright looks like he's mid-20s to 30s, but he's actually supposed to be 19.
Really, dude, that kid.
Yeah.
And they are all kind of thrown into the position, and I like that. That they're all kind of thrown into the positions that they're, a bunch of kids and they're forced to be pilots. I get it, but then like they get to many places where they could just get some adults in those positions. I don't know.
No, because like as they went over, like half of humanity is fucking dead. There's
You're
so
right.
few
You're
fucking
right.
people,
You're
and
right.
on top of that, from the perspective of the Federation, they don't give a fuck about white base. They're just using it as
You're
bait.
right. You're right.
They're
You're
using
right.
white base as bait.
They're basically
all the way
dead.
through
They're
this.
basically exactly. Yes,
Mm.
but you'd think they could sacrifice like one dude. Like what? Like you can pilot the Gundam. You can pilot the Gundam.
I think it's because
And there are times. Sorry, one more thing. It seems there are times where the guy has someone else that could pilot it besides Amuro, and of course the girl pilots it later, whatever. But it seems like
terrible.
he has a. Yes, she is terrible, but it seems like he had a back. Like, why doesn't one of those other kids just do the Gundam? Like, just have another kid do the Gundam.
Like in the TV series, they occasionally have them swap out, and Amuro will do like gun cannon, and then
and Amuro is the best. She's the best.
Yeah, Amuro is the best.
He's a new type.
Exactly. That's the excuse. Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, he just
Okay,
takes.
I'm done. That's all I'm saying. I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay. Look. You like Gundam Wing. You know how Hero fucking Yui works. How he fucking survives.
Yes.
30 feet explosion.
Yes, there's so many ass pulls in Gundam. Yes, I get it. Yes. It's unjust hate from me. Unjust hate.
But anyways, I was talking about Kai. There's this. Basically, he's this resentful fuckwad through most of the series, and he eventually meets this character named Miharu.
It was amazing. I loved that whole part. I loved it.
Yeah, it's a great little part. She's basically this little Xeon spy that's doing it for the two.
So surprising. He gets his own like whole thing. So surprising. Sorry, I'll shut up.
Yeah, his own little arc. And Kai, at this point, he doesn't have anything to fight for. He's kind of resentful towards the White Base crew a little, even if he's grown a little attachment. And so he decides, I'm leaving. I'm gone. We have a really good. We're at port. There's no reason I can't leave. I'm gonna leave. And he meets up with this Miharu, this like redhead that he happened to bump into later, and she goes, "Hey, I can have you over for a few days just until you figure things out. I wouldn't mind at all." It's like, yeah, sure. And she's sort of like probing Kai, asking him questions about the White Base. And Kai almost immediately figures out that she's
sees right through it. Sees right through it. So good, man. And the way he handles it's so great too. I'll let you do it.
Yeah, he basically goes, "Hey, I'll give you like basic information, but I'm not gonna like spam you all sorts of information. But hey, they are going to be leaving at like X time." And for a certain period, Kai's
he does give her some detailed information too. He says the engine's damaged, and if
he does.
That's fair. It'd be bad, you know. So I think he's kind of given up his life with the White Base at this point.
He has,
and he kind of likes this girl, and he understands that she's trying to trick him. But he's like, okay, I'm just going to give you the information. I know you're tricking me. You know that I know. It was a good scene. It's like, you know, I know, and I don't care.
Yeah, and
this is pure, unfiltered simpery.
You could say that.
I liked it, but you're right. It was kind of cucky. Yeah.
Then there's Amuro.
I liked his whole thing. I loved that whole subplot.
And the thing is, like, of course, that initial attack fails, and he in the middle of that attack, he eventually decides, you know what? He has a scene where he thinks it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me. But then in the middle of battle, he says, "God damn it!" And he runs over to the White Base and starts sortying because it does sort of matter to him. And then there's this. And then in the next episode, Miharu comes in and she decides to get involved, and she's basically told almost like a suicide mission, like infiltrate yourself into the White Base. And Kai helps her accomplish this because he does feel that attraction to her, sort of hides her in his room. And Miharu does ultimately. She starts to realize, oh my gosh, there's little kids on this ship as well, like the same style of kids I've been looking for, and I've been like spying just for money for my kids, and there are these same kids here, and she feels terrible. absolutely terrible. She's like crying to Kai, "How can I make this up? Please, I have to fight on your side. Do something." And so she ends up doing so, and they get on this little ship and they shoot missiles at the mobile suits in the water, and one of the missiles jams, so she has to actually go down and shoot it out manually. And she pulls the lever on it, and of course, the blast of the rocket itself blows her into the water. Just. And then when Kai finally gets back and realizes what happened, he's just a sobbing mess, and it's a really big, almost shock, really, because
Yeah, and then
this.
Armoro fucking rats him out because his little fucking stingy bitch.
No, he just mentions like slightly that.
Oh, just
Hey, I guess she
mentions,
was a
just
stowaway.
mentions, just casually mentions. Come on.
Well, he has a responsibility to his captain.
Oh, responsibility. I'm gonna take the Gundam for myself and strand all these people to die.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Car is,
Luz, you just sound like you're seething, to be
he's
honest.
kind of,
I am very much
he's
seething
kind
at this
of-
show.
Yeah,
But-
like in this instance,
I get it.
Car is
We can't
obviously,
let those traitors get by. Can't let those Sikh Zions,
Anyway, so
Okay, go ahead.
At this point, Car is obviously thinking with his dick, right? And as a result, he pays dearly. I mean, it's obviously a bad idea to let an enemy spy on board your ship, right? And then let that spy give the enemy information that you've told them, right? This is obviously a mistake that Car made, right? Because of his simp-like attitude and position in the hierarchy. Okay.
There's that perspective on it, but I think also the perspective that I more took is this is both Kai and Miharu as well, sort of realizing that they can't live above it all, that the war does directly affect them, and it doesn't do them any good to pretend that it doesn't affect them or that they're above it all. And that scene of Kai
right, and
breaking down.
this is why it's a teaching moment for Kai, right?
Yes, it is. And that's like the first scene of genuine raw emotion you see of Kai in the series and in the movies.
I mean, there's another. Sorry, students, but there's another key point for Kai in the series, and it's when he first goes into combat. He's incredibly confident when he's sort of standing on the bridge, and then he jumps down in his gun cannon, and then he actually gets into combat, and then
He gets
suddenly
shell shocked.
Yeah, exactly, and combat isn't what he thought it was, and he's just sort of floundering about. And he gets in that moment. He also gets humbled, and he also learns a lesson. But I don't know. Car's, I would say Car's a good character. Obviously he's a bit of a
He's annoying at times, but yeah.
Gamma, but I don't know. I liked his. I did like his character.
Mm-hmm.
I also did like how for the first movie and maybe for the second movie as well, everybody just basically called them amateurs who basically survived just because of their overpowered mech.
And luck. Yeah.
True.
Is that incorrect?
No, it is not.
No.
It's just NPC. Did you feel like the characters cared that much about why it is that that they fought? Did they care about? Because I kind of felt like they were basically kind of anti-war, and I guess they just wanted their side to win, to end the war. But like, I don't know, like the justification, they didn't really seem to be. I don't know. How do I explain it? I guess
Driven.
driven. I guess. So, for example, or driven by some kind of a ideal or something. Like, for example, I guess there's the new type thing, but
Yeah, that well,
I,
No, Heraclius, go right ahead. I was gonna
oh,
hand it straight to you.
okay, okay. That's quite a intentional point, I think. In the
Yes.
TV series, they don't actually show you anything about Xeon and what they're about until Garma's death in like episode 12 or so. We haven't even talked about Shaw yet. Jeez. And basically it's Giran giving this rousing speech, and Bright has this shocked face where it's like, "You talk about freedom, you just want a zombie dictatorship," and that's like the only bit of politics we get up until like some of the very ending episodes. It's very much a pointed perspective of these are the soldiers, and to a certain degree, the cause is pushing them doesn't matter as much. What matters more is like the individual struggles and tribulations for the
Yeah.
soldiers, and that's an intentional push on the part of the show.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that's exactly what I would say too. Very much agree. And as for the ambition, the drive, I think most of that is reserved for the Char. The Chad Char. he sucks up all the drive in the show, and he gets to be the ambitious one.
The
But yeah,
absolute
yeah,
maniac.
I mean,
yeah.
I
Like,
mean,
yeah.
I guess Cha is ambitious, but I mean, he doesn't want to become the emperor or something like that.
No.
He just wants his revenge or something.
Well, yeah.
Purpose
Yeah,
driven. Yeah, purpose driven. It's better.
yeah. The first time I saw Shah, I thought this guy is dressed like an absolute prat with like his little like white boots and his and like his
I
little
think it
cape
looks cool. I think it looks
and
cool.
then
And
his
then
helmet
and
with
then
like the antennae.
he calls Garma the brat.
Yeah. But
Dude, was that dude gay
but
for
yeah,
him a little? Because they had that scene
No.
where he was like in the shower, and I was like, what is going on right now?
I mean, I'm sure they played it up somewhat for fangirls and whatever.
Huh.
But I mean, you could tell that they were actually good friends and did trust one another. Garma especially towards him, like they grew up at his academy with one another. Basically, same. You can basically think of them as like roommates back in military academy, essentially.
yeah.
And another thing which I kind of did not get is basically how far away in space are they? Why is it that they live in colonies rather than planets? So I guess they must live close to the solar
They
system or something.
they all live in orbit around Earth, and the colonies are essentially these big cylindrical spheres of metal. And this was a scientific idea that was being floated about at the time. NASA actually did some like theoretical drawings that basically Gundam just copied. And the idea is you have these cylindrical spheres, and the cylinder itself rotates to mimic gravity, and then you just sort of put soil and grass and whatever inside. And so essentially you're able to have uh with like artificial weather systems have essentially what's very much like real Earth-like conditions. You just have like simulated rain every so often, occasionally. I mean, it's real rain, but it's being put down by the weather
One
system.
thing is that dude with his wife comments, the one good thing about this planet is the air is clean. So you get a sense of that recycled air kind of thing.
Yeah, those who live on the colonies are you can tell are somewhat second class citizens. They talk about this a little bit where when they arrive on Earth, they mention that I think Mirai, yeah, she has a family on Earth. They basically say anyone who's got a family on Earth is part of the elite.
Yeah, I guess they do say that, but I don't know. I kind of didn't feel like
Yeah, no, yeah.
Well,
You don't
yeah,
really
it,
feel
it
that's a distinction. Also, something else to note is that anytime you see sort of a colony member having to leave their colony and go somewhere else, they're usually complaining and saying, "Oh well, we liked our lives back, back on the colony.
mhm.
Life was good there." So it's obviously not like you know um, there's too much of a real distinction. It's probably maybe just an attitude.
No, it is very much an attitude thing. They don't go into it too much here in the original show. They go into it more in Zeta Gundam and some of the sequels, but even then, very much the idea that's got across is while there is a certain amount of resentment from those who live in space, the space noids, towards the Earth noids, those who live on Earth, uh, it's somewhat unjustified. There are still a lot of people that live on Earth in really, really crummy conditions. It's just sort of like a resentment because the central government is on Earth, and the Earth sometimes doesn't really give a crap about what people on the space colonies want.
But it's not like the Earth is extracting resources from the colonies or something, is it?
Well, no, that's actually lore-wise is the case. The Earth is actually reliant on the space colonies somehow for survival.
Somehow. I guess, yeah, I guess maybe natural resources, mining or something, must be something like
Well,
that.
Well, Gundam takes place, and they don't go into this too much, but it's basically the idea is humans have completely fucked up Earth. It's all turned into desert to a great extent. It's Earth's not in a good spot. They don't go into that too much in this show, but later shows that's a huge, huge point that they emphasize over and over. Big environmental message.
Yeah, what you see on Earth is sort of two biomes. One is a huge desert where they have like a big fight, and then when they actually, I think the second location you see is sort of in a rainforest where you see like a picture of flamingos and swans and things.
Yeah, that's one thing
Um,
I will definitely criticize the show for is it's not very good at really establishing when you're changing from place to place. And these are real places they're going by, but at the same time, it's not very good at
I don't know. I felt like in
establishing them.
the movie that wasn't very good, but in the show, man, I felt like it was forever getting from place to place.
It
In the
was
show, I felt like
forever
it went
getting.
forever.
They were forever in one place, but at the same time, it didn't make it really clear how they jumped from place to place. I'm fairly sure. I could be wrong, but I'm
Like I
fairly
remember,
sure that they come down somewhere in North America. Then it basically blinks over them and they cross over the ocean and they're over to the middle of Central Asia, Kazakhstan, and they're pushing towards Odessa Day, where there's going to be a big push against the Zeons on Earth. And then once that's done, they after not too long, they get over to Jaburo, which is basically in Brazil. It's
I remember it taking forever to get to Jaburo.
it does. It does take forever to get to Jaburo. But at the same
yeah,
time, each individual spot where they're at, um, it's huge jump from one place to the huge jump to the next place. It's not that they don't spend a lot of time in each individual place. It's just geographically, it's like they're constantly almost making warp gate jumps from one spot to the next.
yeah. Another sort of issue I have, and sort of thinking about it now, is that the territories or like the borders are never really defined in the show. Like, I
No.
have no idea which parts of Earth, which parts of space, like Xeon are in control of, or which parts of Federation are in control of. So there's like, I never really got a sense of any battle having really much effect in the war, sort of on a bigger scale, other
They could have
than
made
this character died and this character didn't.
Yeah, they could have made that a little clearer. They North America they mention is totally controlled by Xeon, and that's why
Mhm.
like the first episodes they're completely on the run. And then
Yeah.
you can sort of tell by the fact that the Federation is coming in through Eastern Europe, through Central Asia rather, and that essentially Xeon controls Western Europe somewhat, and then the Feddies control more Eastern Europe. Uh, but then there's something about somehow Central Asia is neutral ground ish, or such a weird statement that they make there.
Yeah, and there's also these neutral territories in space as well.
Yeah,
But
that
yeah,
at least makes
I
more
would have.
sense because there's like
Yeah,
some
yeah,
space colonies that choose not to get involved.
yeah. I just really would have appreciated like a map at some point. Just
Yes.
just so I know like what I'm looking at really, and
In the
like
second
where they are.
movie, they do that a little.
Yeah, and they do it again in the third when they talk about the entry points into Xeon, which is like there's okay. So this again didn't really make much sense. So there's 3 entry points into Xeon. Xeon also owned part of the Earth and a bunch of stations. So like there kind of has to be more than 3 entry points into Xeon. I don't know. It was very weird.
I don't know if they actually go over it in the TV series.
Xeon is probably a place
well.
as well as their
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Xeon's headquarters is on side 3, which is the furthest space colony from Earth. One of the things, maybe the show goes over it, but it's sort of a blink and you miss it thing, is by the end of the show and movie, Xeon has completely evacuated Earth. Completely. And they've basically all just gone into space, fallen back, and they're just struggling to hang on and struggling to hold on to their space fortresses.
It was mentioned a few times how weak they were compared to the Earth forces, and I think a lot of the damage they did was because they threw the satellites onto the planet like nukes.
Yeah. They basically did these colony drops. If you actually look in Gundam maps, there's like a big hole where Sydney, Australia used to be, and there's just a lake there into the ocean.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of cool. Yeah, there's lots of fascinating aspects of this franchise. I guess we could say also, right? I mean, it's been a while since I've actually been like excited to hear that like the characters are going to go into space, right? Because I think at the end of the second film, where they spend the entire film on Earth, and the second film is a good film, but I actually felt excited and infused to actually see space, right? I mean, I don't really know how to describe it, but there's like certain qualities of this film that actually do make you appreciate appreciate why people were so interested and fascinated with space, and it feels like a genuine adventure, and you don't really know what they're going to face next. So that's really something that I appreciated about these films so far.
I've heard some people draw parallels between between otaku and new types. I mean,
I haven't seen that, but some have said that like new types are all autists, both as a joke and semi-serious.
That's good.
Is Shaw a new type though? I mean,
yes.
I guess Shaw is.
Yeah, it's actually explicitly
kind of
stated that he is a new type. I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I always just saw Shaw as a new type, but he wasn't a new type in the same way as I forgot his name. Yeah, Amuro was. Yeah,
he was an Esper. He was an Esper.
Interesting. Yeah. So he was like them, but not as like powerful as them. I guess.
No.
I don't know. But yeah, actually, sort of going back to Shah for a second, I think that I kind of think the reason why I liked him so much, and people usually do like him, is because whenever he's like fighting Amuro, like you don't actually know if he's gonna like win or lose, right? There's definitely a sort of equal fight there, you could say, where Shah has more experience and the powers, and Amuro is just pure talent, basically. And those fights are quite interesting. Whereas if you know, when Amuro is fighting other villains, you're usually going to expect Amuro to win, just because the the other villains aren't Shah, basically.
Yeah,
So yeah,
Rambaral works well as a rival and villain, and really hammers home the sense of like Xeon are other people too. Xeon are often like the gentleman soldiers, and I think the battles between him are good. But yeah, a lot of the mooks, it's like, they're just gonna get taken down.
yeah. I'm not saying like all the villains apart from Shah were like bad or anything, because there were a couple that I did quite like. As usual, I've forgotten everyone's names, which which is something I always do in these discussions. But it was the guy with the hot wife.
Yeah, I think
He
that's
meets.
Rambaral, the fat guy with the blue Zaku / Goof.
Yeah. I
Yes.
quite liked him. He had like he was very I don't know. Well, I think as you said, right, he was sort of gentlemanly.
Yes.
And you know, so yeah, I definitely did enjoy a lot of the villains as well.
Yeah, there's this one scene where when Amuro has just taken the Gundam off and left the white base, and he's just sort of like manging around through this through this one bar, and Rambaral's wife notices him there, and he's like, Amuro's eating nothing, and Ramba's wife Haman offers to buy him like basically food there. And
Yeah,
Amuro goes like, "Hey, I don't want charity," and it goes like,
yeah,
"Hey, kid, don't. It means a lot for Lady Hammond to want to be interested in someone, or uh, and then there's this dynamic there where, in a way, that is some of the most genuine warm regard that Amuro had actually gotten in a while. I guess aside from Frau, but he's constantly pushing Frau to the side.
hmm
yes. Oh my God, like I kind of yeah. I kind of feel sorry for a Frau, honestly. Like I
Yeah,
don't
you're
think she understands
supposed.
that. Like
Do you know what
yes,
Frau's
sorry.
character is in the first movie? Armoro, 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 Armoro,
Yeah,
Armoro. That's Frau in the first movie.
Yes. Yeah, she is the prototypical childhood friend that that the
The
growing
little
teenager.
children have more lines than her.
Okay, well, in the TV show,
yeah,
she has more lines, but
It's still
yeah,
the same.
yes, more or less. Yeah, she's actually, when Amuro runs away, she's the only one that's like trying to really get Amuro back onto the ship, while the rest of them are like, "Hey, he's technically a deserter. If he comes back, we could technically court-martial him and execute him for what he did." And Frau's like, "How could you?" And I mean, she sort of does understand, like, yeah, that is
And
military.
hopefully he slaps her, right?
Mm.
No, no.
No, no.
Sad.
Back to the new type stuff. By the way, Quedsy in the chat is asking whether you are doing all right, Tour Agent.
Yeah, which had chat. Also, also, why does he ask as well? It's very nice of him to be so curious.
Yeah. So, NPC, what did you think of?
Okay, I'm gonna get not.
What? What's going on?
I'm not gonna get an answer, am I?
Huh?
I try and find his thing then.
All right. Well, if I got the question, so I'll ask another question. Is Xeon just a lap? I mean, they kind of act like it has the way that they dress and all that. It's more like they have been there for a long time, but Xeon isn't even one generation old, right?
No. Xeon was founded by Digwin Zabi. I think it would have been like decade and a half, 2 decades before the show. There was this politician who was the father of Shah and Sayla named Xian Daikun, and he brought up this new type theory. Well, basically, he was very pro everyone moving into space, and he also had this view that people that moved into space were naturally their horizons would expand, their minds would expand to fill the void, and essentially they perhaps would become better people. It's purposely left vague whether or not this was like an idyllic thing, or whether he had some inkling of like the actual powers that were starting to develop in people.
I mean, is it ever explained why new types exist at all? Or
No, it is quite purposefully like you know how in the Plinkett reviews how he complains about how the Force got rationalized in the prequels. That never happened in Gundam. Like new type powers are always essentially magic.
I got a sense that there was like naturally talented people that they called espers, and then that the Zions were trying to maybe artificially create espers. You know.
Yes, they're starting to try and artificially create a few of them. You see with Lala that this actually lets them pilot certain units with remote weapons that can just devastate other mobile suits and fleets, because it's like imagine you have a whole bunch of like guns that you can control with your mind with telekinesis and can like float up to the enemy and shoot him in the back. It's really powerful.
I see. The new type stuff. I mean, the first time I watched the series a long time ago, and I can't barely remember much. But I remember I was kind of annoyed with Lala's character. I kind of felt like it was a bunch of hippie nonsense. Um, did you feel that way too, Lou?
I don't know. I like women characters, you know, so probably not really. No.
What about you, NPC?
A bit of hippie nonsense. Well, that could be one way to describe it. Yeah, she's she's more of how would you describe Lala? A fellow spirit, like an understanding spirit, like a very kind and empathetic person in general. And that sort of, I don't know the lore on it, but maybe that presents itself in the way her new type powers, come about. But I mean, yeah, kind of hippie stereotype, I guess you could say.
I guess
it is
aesthetic.
It is a hippie stereotype, but at the same time, I like a lot of the imagery, and there's also this pureness to it. Like,
Yeah,
they're very much. You can tell this was made like 70s to 80s. There is this genuine feeling.
Yeah, I liked
that
the style. I liked it.
there's this genuine feeling that maybe there is something greater like inside of us all that we can tap into, and maybe we can like make these connections with one another. And that's the thing
Uh-huh.
with Amuro and Lala, and you see it with them, and some people will feel it's too rushed, other will feel that it's somewhat inspiring, that Amuro and Lala, despite only briefly meeting, are able to understand one another almost immediately. Their minds are basically able to get into each other's
You know what it
minds
kind
and
of
be able
reminds
to
me of?
communicate.
There's this book called The Alchemist, and the main character meets this chick named Fatma in the book. It's very similar to that relation.
Yeah, Fatima.
Fatima,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's very similar to that.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, the only criticism I would have around Lala's character isn't her relationship with Amuro, because this can be explained through supernatural
Mhm.
ends. It was mainly the fact that Char's and her relationships sort of came out of nowhere. Like
Yes.
in the first
The-
film, there's absolutely no mention of her whatsoever.
No.
It's almost as if like Char isn't even thinking about her, or
Yeah.
that she doesn't exist at all yet.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
possible.
it's sort of out of nowhere, Charles is just is just sort of hanging around her all the time, and I think like because she does sort of die in the second one, and even start having like a romantic relationship with with each other, and this was it didn't really feel too believable, because it just felt like it came out of nowhere. But maybe if you watch the actual series, it sort of gets built a bit slower.
No, it is just sort of like
No,
dropped
it
in.
is pretty.
Yeah, it does just sort of show up. Admittedly, Shaw just like drops out of the TV show itself for like a good 20 episodes or so, almost. But yeah, Lala does just sort of
There's a
show
weird
up.
pacing in this show, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
there is a weird pacing. It does sort of feel like, I say almost, it comes from an era where TV shows were
Yeah.
expected to be very episodic, and
Yes, it was. Yes.
and the whole show is basically focused around what's going to be the next battle of this episode, what's going to be the next engagement of this episode, which works well enough, but it can sometimes lead
It's
to, I think,
frustrating.
not
yeah,
enough build
it
up.
can't.
Yeah. Also as a result, these films do feel like one battle after another, because I guess
Yes.
that's what the show was.
Yes, essentially.
Yeah, speaking of the battles, I don't know. Other than the last one, like even Operation Odessa kind of felt small scale somehow. Like you don't get to see the bigger picture of the battle.
Yeah, you don't get the large scale right until like the very, very end. I agree they could have done a little bit more for Operation Odessa, but at the same time, for everything else, they are. Oh, and there is like a lot of fighting around Jaburo, when they have the like Xeon descend there and take over. There's a lot of fighting there, so that's a big pitched battle. You don't see as much of it. Like there's a pitched battle up top, and then there's the characters dealing with their shit underground, and then the really big pitched battle are all the ones in space.
I see.
Yeah. The big space battle at the end in the third film was like actually bonkers. Like I was surprised with how chaotic they managed to make it feel, and yeah, it was. I quite liked that. Those are scenes.
It's very chaotic. There's like mobile suits and people just dying and blowing up everywhere. Giant colony lasers being shoved from both sides, just exploding half of each other's fleets. And it all
Yeah.
feels very apocalyptic and like a suicide mission for both sides, really. It's really like every side
Yeah.
is
It feels like a last gasp, basically.
every side is just throwing everything that they have left, and that's actually lore-wise what's going on. And lore-wise, like Xeon could have won there, because like even though Xeon was like on their final stretch, since all the materials were being thrown into that final battle, if one side had won that final battle, the other side just wouldn't have had enough forces left to contest things anymore.
Why didn't Xeon use their super weapon again? Why did they only use it once?
Because I assume it has a long charge time. I mean,
Yeah.
they do show that more. They talk about that more explicitly when colony lasers come up in later shows, but I mean, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to realize that such a thing would have a large charge time.
I guess they should have said
I
so.
thought,
Yeah.
yeah, I thought there was a line where they said it could only be fired
Yeah.
once. But maybe I'm imagining things.
Yeah,
it was
it's
very
quite
quick.
possible.
Yeah, I remember that line too, I think.
Okay.
But it was very quick, like it was just passing.
Mhm.
It wasn't stressed at all.
Yeah.
But
The
we
show in
lost
general, the show in general goes through a lot of stuff, and some stuff inevitably falls through the cracks.
yeah, it does.
Yeah,
I would call this show great core concepts and
Mhm.
great formula,
Yeah.
but rough around the edges. That's what I would say.
yeah,
But
I'd agree.
yeah, the core of it is great. Like from my point of view, it's got all the world building that you could ever ask for in an anime. It's got all the great characters and character drama you could ever ask for in an anime, and it just can keep going on that formula over and over again, and just like infinite possibilities. And it's totally understandable from my point of view to see what it became. You know how big it
Yeah.
got, and it's still
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, how it became this big franchise. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There are like two more things I want to say. The first is wasn't if it was like up with the orphans. To be honest, like I kind of think at the end of the second film they should have probably gone to the orphanage.
Yes, I agree. But
Yeah.
like, there's this scene where they actually save the kids when they're rescued. Save the bombs from going off and destroying all the Allied mobile suits. And there's this
Yeah, they do.
scene. And there's this scene where the kids basically like beg to stay on because they're so attached to everyone, and so they decide to keep them on.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, eh.
I mean, yeah. Like
But
that
it feels
ahead.
more like this is TV show, and we want to keep the whole band together to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. But sort of in the third film, they don't really have a lot to do. They're like literally just sort of floating around there, sort of doing nothing.
Yes.
I guess you sort of have like some like funny scenes of them, like sort of baiting like the enemies when they're sort of blown away into the into white base, but
Yeah.
they're sort of
Just
in the
there.
background in the third film, so it
Yeah.
kind of feels a bit pointless having that whole like thing
Yeah.
you
could say that.
in the second.
Yeah, in the sequel series, they do end up getting adopted by Frau and Hayato, who get married.
So
I see.
Interesting.
Drama.
In the notes that you sent me, Sig. Oh, sorry, I mean,
Mhm. Yeah. What?
Hercule.
Miraculous.
Hercules. All right. So, yeah, you should have just stick with Sig New Zeon. I don't know.
I could have. Whatever.
So in the notes that you sent me, you asked the question: is Amuro too normal a protagonist?
Yeah, I came up.
Yeah, go on.
I came across that in like a little Tomino interview and like some article. That basically this was Tomino reflecting like pretty much almost nowish that he felt that Amuro was a little too normal, didn't have as much going on, and wasn't as distinctive a protagonist. I can feel a little of that. He is like a nerd who very much takes to things, but he's not compared to Char. He's not someone who has lots going on. Lala even mentions to him that he's a character that doesn't have anything to fight for. And in a way, I almost like him more in the sequel series, even though he shows up less in that, because he has like a real midlife crisis and internal struggle to go through there. A lot of this is Amuro slowly growing up, but it's mostly the thing is like he takes the military life surprisingly well, and he's mostly just resentful. But then he just sort of gets over his resentfulness slowly, and that's sort of his whole character arc in a nutshell. There's not too you. I guess you could say it's part of being episodic, and you do see like in each individual episode, you can see how Amuro has shifted in his mindset. But at the same time, there aren't too many dramatic moments I can point to where I can say, this is where Amuro had a real change in perspective.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can say the bright
Yeah.
slap is the famous scene where that is an example of that. But there's not too many examples beyond that.
yeah. Basically, he just becomes like basically people make fun of him about being a new type or whatever, but that just basically becomes his character. The fact that he's good at piloting a gun, a mech.
Yeah, by the end, the Fraubo straight says Amuro's different. None of us can really be like him.
Yeah.
hmm
Um. So, Toad Agent, did you feel like you wanted one side in the conflict to win more than the other, or didn't you really care?
Um, yeah, like I would have sided with Xeon, to be honest.
Well, to be fair, Xeon has got all the coolest mechs. Um,
Xeon gets more characterization overall.
yeah, overall, that's another thing which I felt. If you remember my reactions while watching uh, on the Discord server, I basically said that when it comes to the higher ups, we get a lot more characterization from this Xeon Xeon side's characters,
Yeah,
leaders. Yeah,
part of it also is with Xeon, you see a lot of honorable characters. Dozel Zabi, Degwin Garma, and yeah, those types of characters. Wambaral.
Rumble, yeah.
Whereas with the Federation, and this is actually good in terms of like contrasting the sides, but with the Federation, it is more like everyone's a bureaucrat or just a soldier, and just doing their job and being whisked around by powers above them.
hmm
And General Revel is like the only higher up, and he's like the head guy of the Federation forces militarily. But he's like the only guy that has like a leg out for the White Base and its crew, and everyone else is just like views them as disposable and does use them as disposable. And so that does create this slight resentment towards the Earth Federation and slight positivity towards Xeon. But at the same time, you do have Kieran at the very end, who's basically absconded with power towards himself, and he's talking about, let's. Once we win, we're going to create a world where only the truly worthy will be allowed to live. And his father goes to him, "Have you heard of a man named Adolf Hitler? You're following in his footsteps." Which actually is kind of a corruption of what
Yeah.
Hitler actually wanted, but at the same time, that kind of works because there's like
Yeah.
so much time has gone by. They describe Hitler as living in the Middle Ages that you can sort of buy
Yeah.
whether it was a mistake being made on the people writing it or not. You can buy it.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's quite possibly not. Yeah.
And I mean,
No, I mean,
did that kind of come out of nowhere? Not really, I guess. I mean,
Well, they have Giren. They don't focus too much on the Zabi family is the thing. It's on and off. But when you do focus on the Zabi family, and you see this a little more in the TV show, Giren is always the one that is basically trying to abscond power. When Garma dies, he's the one who insists that you have to have this huge, big state funeral, and of course, is trying to get popularity towards himself. Whereas Degwin, the father, he just wants to have a quiet funeral. And Kycelia,
yeah,
Kycelia also, she also is manipulative. In one of the little subplots in the TV show is Amuro comes across this little while he's run away from the white base, he comes across this little mining base of Kycelia's, and she's keeping it all secret from Giren and everyone else in Zeon. And once Amuro starts to blow it up and is taking it over, she orders the whole base to be blown up, even though there's soldiers left behind. You get the sense that there is internal, essentially. Degwin was the father figure, and he would have liked Garma to be the youngest of the sons, to be set up as leader. But with his death, it was basically Garma and Kycelia left scheming for power between the two of them.
yeah.
Oh,
It's sort of yeah. I think it's very clearly expressed that Garwin is sort of the outlier in in the whole family. As bad as
yeah,
Kystelia is, at least she still has that loyalty to her father. And she feels like Garma has massively betrayed his position, which is
yeah,
sort of what
Giren.
leads her to Garen, which is what leads her to assassinate him, basically.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and she gets to be the ruler, I guess, for about 10 minutes before she gets blown up.
Pretty much. Yeah. People debate whether you should consider her too evil or not. I mean, she's not a megalomaniac like Giren is, but at the same time, and a lot of people look this over because we're sympathetic to Shaw because he's like one of the central characters. She knew that Shaw killed Garma, and yet she immediately tried to recruit him into her services. And sure, she did like try and ascertain what happened, and Shaw seemed to be sincere about saying he was sorry and that it didn't help him any. But at the same time, she did just sort of like accept him. I guess maybe
Yeah,
I guess maybe it does mention that she actually played with him as a child. Perhaps she has a certain amount of sympathy there that
I mean,
they did sort of assassinate their father. She can see why he would have been pushed towards doing that.
to be honest, to me, it came off more like, "Oh, this guy is useful." She
Yes,
didn't
very
really,
much so.
she didn't really care about punishing the murderer of her brother, but
Yes,
and instead chose to get him on her side because he's useful. But then,
yes,
obviously, Cha uh, double crossed her, and yeah, so that's how I saw it.
yeah. I that's pretty much correct. I guess you could basically just say with her, she is very Machiavellian herself. She's just the type of character where she has standards. It's like, I guess if I'm to bring a Star Trek reference in, she's almost like a Romulan. She's like, okay, she's constantly conniving, but she has standards. And you don't cross those standards. And like, Giran crossed them by killing his own father.
Hmm.
So, Lou, before he left, briefly mentioned the English dub. What's wrong with it?
The English dub for the TV series is absolutely fine. It's actually considered a rather nice dub. Overall, it's a little cheesy in parts, but it's nothing too bad. The movie dubs, in particular, this was one of the first things that were ever dubbed. The voice acting, they use completely different voice actors from the TV series. It's all rather odd sounding. For example, you have what's his name? Spike Spiegel's voice actor as Shaw.
Yes. About the voice acting, I would say the voice acting does dramatically improve when you get to the third film. But yeah, in that first film, you could make like a 20-minute sort of clip show where you sort of compile like a bunch of like hilarious, poorly sort of delivered lines from that first film.
Yeah, and the other thing was when they were doing that, they hadn't decided on what they were going to call all these things yet, how they were going to Romanize the names. So as a result, you get weird things like, well, Xeon's called a duchy. They later decide principality. But what's worse is they call it Gundam. So there's this, there's this scene where Bright shows up on the Bright slap scene, and he says like, "Amuro, I want you to pilot Gundam. If you care about it so much, why don't you pilot the Gundam?" And what makes it even worse is like, even the lines of dialogue don't match up with what was actually being said in the Japanese at all. It's like very, very loose. It's just like a very poorly done early dub for the movies.
I like the bit in the dub where Char is in like his little ship, and he's really calm, and he says something like "next time," and then he suddenly shouts, "I'll be back," just out of nowhere. That's like such a funny bit that's really got me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll make it a project where I just go through that first film, the dub for it, and I just sort of clip out all the especially funny parts, because it really is sort of a treasure trove.
Oh, that'd be great to do.
About the Japanese dub, I guess the torrent which I downloaded had a re-recording, for basically all the three movies. So apparently, I don't know if any of you have seen it, but have heard it rather. But it's much better. I think it said that it was from 2000, a re-recording made in 2000, and the sound. Sorry. No.
Oh, I think that is the standard version that they uploaded on Gundam Info on their YouTube channel, because I noticed for the character of Slager Law, his voice actor was entirely different from what it was in the TV series. So that was almost certainly the re-recording. Like, the voice actor had probably died by then.
I see. And I don't know.
Well, to watch that, I have to cancel all my plans.
Yeah, obviously. I mean,
only a few people will get that one. It's such a great moment as well, where Shah is sort of talking about his failures in the first film after he tries to invade he tries to invade like the home, and then he's sort of asking for like more missiles, and more Garkus or whatever it's called. And then like the admiral was like, "W Shah, I have to cancel all my plans." And he says it in such like a diva-ish tone. It's just so funny. I had a dinner party tonight. I have to cancel all my plans. Anyway, yeah, it's difficult to sort of put across how like ridiculous that scene was, but yeah, it's really funny.
So, NPC, who is best girl?
Best girl for me, man. This one might be a tough one.
Oh, that reminds me. There's a little bit of trivia we have. I want to go over.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
This third movie may have been the originator of hentai.
Oh, jeez.
What?
Apparently, where there's scene where in the third movie where Sailor is getting out of the shower, and they
Yes,
show
I
it
remember that.
like a little bit.
Yeah.
People took pictures of that in the theater and started passing them around, and this was a little bit of a shock to people. And they was like, "Oh my gosh, there's a market for this stuff." And then a couple of years later, yeah. So
No.
I guess the influence that Gundam has had on anime has been great.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I think. So I'll go.
Yeah. Who's best girl? I guess.
Yeah, best girl.
Sailor, obviously, but let's hear your answers as well.
I honestly don't have one. I didn't like I didn't really find a waifu out of all the female characters in the show. They were good characters, but just not really none waifu material for me personally.
I see.
Yeah, I would say Sailor, but Mirai sort of comes a close second. You know.
Yeah. I think I'd have to agree with Thought Agent here. Mirai. It's probably cool, but it's not a very it's not a very competitive field.
I guess the color, I don't know, the designs were not moe enough or something.
Yeah, the designs are, I don't know. They're a little dated looking. I feel like by the time you got to Zeta, you had actually more attractive, relatively looking designs.
Yeah, but like it's not so much the designs for me. I don't know. They all have dilemmas, and all the waifus, quote unquote, are pretty flawed in this show.
Yes,
and they, and their male counterparts are too.
Yeah,
but I guess the one that, yeah, go ahead.
There's relatively few idealized characters in this.
Yes. So that's why I don't really have a waifu besides Mirai. But yeah.
Mirai is the black-haired chick, right? So the one at the.
Yeah. She's the pilot.
Ship helm.
Yeah.
No. Mirai is the one who helms the ship. She's the pilot.
Yeah.
What? I don't know.
Yeah.
Why is she best girl, Thought Agent?
I was there. I didn't say she's best girl. I say Sailor's best girl, but she just comes a close seconds.
Oh.
Nice.
All right. I mean, I just thought she had a better personality, and her troubles were, for the most part, more sorted out, and she had more control over her emotions for the most part than a lot of the other characters. Until
Slager comes into things.
Yep, until Slager comes in and just chads everything up.
Chads it. Slager's a great fucking character in this.
Yeah,
he just shows up, bitches being rude to her betrothed slaps her across the face. Now she's wet for him.
And then he dies.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, but yeah, like I thought she was a pretty good, little assistant for the captain or ensign or Bright,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can tell that there's a little bit of a build-up of a relationship there. Yeah, there's one scene where basically Bright says, like, I can't be the person that you lean on, except essentially.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Because they both, because essentially they're constant confidants throughout the TV series, and that's sort of what it builds off of, is the idea of they're constantly leaning on one another and relying on one another. And there's like this whole bit where Bright is sick and he just really has to rely on Mirai to helm the ship. He's very appreciative of her for that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in the notes that you sent, you also said, Heraclius, you also said that the concept of new types as depicted in MSG, is it inspiring? Does the instant understanding work for you narratively? I guess, I don't know, I kind of felt like when it comes to the new types, there isn't much you, in real life which is analogous to it. So
No.
so you can't. I just felt like it was something inside the story, totally. Because at least even with the Gundams, as you said, as you made a nice analogy on the server, that like that the reason why Zeon was able to, yeah.
Yeah, if I can, yeah, the analogy is basically mobile suits allowed Xeon to win the first 10 months of the war, and it's a little like if Japan was the only country that had aircraft carriers in World War II, and they just decimated America, and America had to scramble to develop their own aircraft carriers. That's a bit what it's like in Mobile Suit Gundam, with the development of mobile suits, which are like the
Yeah.
giant mechs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I do have one question about the final film. It's at the very end, and you posted this. It's this message. It's this message that sort of comes up, and it says, "And now, in anticipation of your insight into the future," and and so that message comes up, but then it just sort of fades to black. So I kind of thought they would like show something else at the very end after that message, but it just shows that message and then it fades to black basically, and then the film ends. I was curious if there was sort of anything to that, or if it was just a message at the end basically.
Well, it's a message at the end that's basically sort of like a passing of the torch to the new generation. This is something you see in a lot of Tomino's Gundam stuff, which comes up even more. Is the tension between the old generation and the new generation and the old generation, and that's sort of what new types and old types are a metaphor for. Shaw, when he's talking with Sayla a little bit, he is actually like very dismissive, and he's like, we almost like the old types they can't change their ways, they're stuck in them, we have to get rid of them. And Sayla's like, but aren't the old types the spring from which all new types come from? Like, isn't this the groundswell? Can't people change?
Mhm.
And in terms of the final
I get that.
in terms of the final message, it is very much just sort of a basic message to the audience of like, in anticipation of what you will bring to the table to the future, your insights to hopefully make like a better world.
Mhm. That's the way I took it too.
Has any of you
Interesting.
has any of you seen Ideon?
I have not. I need to. That's the other super famous Tomino show that actually was a big inspiration for Evangelion, and that was made 82. So like around the same time the movies were coming out, and the Gundam movies were coming out, and I know it's wilder in terms of like they have a giant robot that's insane and wants to blow up the universe and stuff.
Not really. I mean, not that I remember it that way, but it's basically um, the same thing. I don't know. I don't know if Tomino does this elsewhere, but the whole plot of a ship being used as bait and basically having to run around without nowhere where it can land and get away from the conflict. It's I don't know. I kind of felt like it was a lot more desperate and the stakes were higher in Ideon, and of course the ending of Eva was inspired by Ideon. So
Yeah,
the everybody dies ending,
Yeah, I know the ending of Ideon. It's super fucking trippy.
Yeah, and everybody dies. And
spoilers.
Spoilers.
Oh yeah,
Spoilers.
Spoiler.
It's been out since 1982, but yeah, spoilers.
Spoiler.
By the way, did it come out before Mobile Suit Gundam or after?
Ideon was 82, Gundam was 79.
Also after, I see.
Yeah, Ideon could not have been made. Oh no, it was 1980. Oh my gosh, so he just made that directly after he got done with Gundam. Wow.
Because I've heard some people say that, you don't need to watch Ideon because everything which was done in Ideon was done better in Mobile Suit Gundam. Specifically, Snob said that.
I haven't seen it. I couldn't really say, but I'd be skeptical of that claim, if only because I know the ending of Ideon is like, I'd say a pretty far departure from anything in Gundam.
Yeah, I guess the biggest problem with Ideon, which I guess it's sort of a problem in Gundam too, but not as bad, is that the whole episodic
Yes.
like they're being chased around the universe, and it just goes on and on and on. I think I don't know.
Yeah,
that's
that's unfortunately something that's just endemic to this era. Like all 70s anime, and then up until like mid 80s is when it starts to change a little. It's all episodic, and some people dig that. I don't hate it, but I do think it actually detracts somewhat. Especially because, and I made mention of it, some of the character stuff is like a little spread out, and they don't because they have to resolve everything each episode, and it's just a 20-minute episode. Sometimes feels like, and of course they also have to make time for a battle scene each episode. It sometimes feels like they don't have time for much more than a couple minutes of characterization per episode.
Mm-hmm.
I see. So
Other than characterization through battle, but
I mean,
sort of.
I kind of felt like the side characters and stuff like there was something. It wasn't nothing.
No,
it wasn't just the Amuro and Cha show,
No,
which I expected
no.
it to be because I'd heard because I'd seen Cha's counterattack, which is the final installment film, which ends it, and which ends, I think, this timeline as well. I don't know if it goes on afterwards.
The timeline goes on. There's a recent show called Gundam Unicorn, which takes place only 3 years afterward, and sort of works as a bookend. And then there's shows that take place like 30 and then 60 years down the timeline, but they're so far down the timeline and they reference nothing that they almost might as well be in an alternate universe.
So, do you think that Mobile Suit Gundam or either the series or the compilation are a good place to get into Gundam? Because I feel like a lot of people who are not into Gundam don't want to get into it because they don't know where to start.
Yeah. As far as for Mobile Suit Gundam, if you like old anime already, Mobile Suit Gundam, the original, is a good place to get into it. If you don't like old anime already, and I'm not talking 90s anime, I'm talking 70s to 80s. That's what I mean by old anime. Because there's a
Mhm.
big distinction between those eras. If you
Yeah.
don't already like that era of anime, you can certainly give it a try, but I would personally recommend for most people trying to get into Gundam 00. I think that came out in like 2007. I think that's a real fan pleaser thing. It's directed by the same guy who directed the 2003 Full Metal Alchemist, and story wise, I think it appeals a lot more to modern sensibilities. Has a big focus on the war on terror and stuff like that was going on then
So
at the
you,
time.
so I guess you don't think
The
that
main character in that show is literally a former Islamic jihadist.
so you don't think that MSG, the compilation movies, are representative of Gundam in general?
No, I do think they are representative of Gundam in general, but the thing is, Gundam has changed so much from like iteration to iteration. That is sort of like the strength and weakness of Gundam is you can do whatever you want with an individual Gundam series. Like the only follow through really is a show about giant robots, and it's usually Earth Federation versus rebelling space colonies. But these shows will go off in very different directions. Like the Gundam shows, basically all through that were all directed by Tomino from like the first three, and then the movie shows Counterattack all have one feel, and then G Gundam has a different feel completely because that's a super robot shonen action show. It's like martial arts show. And then Gundam Wing is completely off the bonkers insane, and that has a different feel. Gundam Seed is like teen melodrama and has a completely different feel. That's another show that's good for modern people, depending on your toleration for teen melodrama.
So is it like Fate, where like every series they're going to explain to you the law again about
It's
about
Oh no.
not really, because the thing is, well, Fate is its own bag of worms, but the thing is, like, Fate is just like alternate timeline after alternate timeline in theoretically the same world. In Gundam, it's like, this is a new world. This has nothing to do with what came beforehand. You could call it Super Robot Fighter Dyna Grezon or whatever. You could call it that if you want.
I mean
But they just use the
Super
name
robot
Gundam.
fighter. Sorry.
I mean, so the I guess I mean, isn't that disappointing to the fans who want to know more about the law and stuff? I mean, like, is for example the Federation and Xeon, do they like just not exist in some series? Um,
There's usually, well, in most series, there's usually some version of the Earth Federation, and there's usually something that can sort of represent Xeon, but not always. Not always. Thing is, though, this central timeline, the Universal Century, and specifically this 1 year war, which is what the original series deals with, has a zillion side story OVAs. There's 0080, there's 8th MS Team, there's a zillion side story mangas that we haven't gotten. Gundam Thunderbolt also takes place during this. And then there's other side stories like 0083. There's a hell of a lot of side stories that delve into just this timeline, and trust me, the Japanese are very interested in this timeline. They're very interested in exploring it and pushing it in new directions. Part of the issue there is sometimes you do get like changes in characterization. Like you can tell that Tomino had one idea of what the Federation was sort of going towards, and other people had different ideas. essentially, I'll spoil a little bit. Essentially, Tomino sees the Federation as this corrupt beast that was at its strongest at the end of this show, and slowly goes into decline afterwards.
Hmm.
Whereas other people take more of the view that the Federation is this corrupt, evil empire that does have a lot of power behind it.
So,
Mhm.
Yeah, interesting. As someone who's only seen these 3 films, I would say, considering I actually enjoyed them and liked the latter two quite a lot. Um, I would actually say this is a good place to start. Like, after watching these films, I do want to go out and watch more Gundam. I guess my
Mhm.
question is, what on earth would I like? What on earth would I watch next? Basically, after these films.
Zeta Gundam is the direct sequel to all of this. So
Okay.
essentially, which we might watch later for this, but essentially you can think of in terms of there's, depending on the way you see it, 3 to 4 main installments. There's Mobile Suit Gundam, there's Zeta Gundam, there's Double Zeta Gundam, which you can sort of skip if it throws you for a loop. It does throw some people for a loop. And then it ends with the Shaw's counterattack movie. And sort of like, that's it. That's the complete package of like original Gundam stuff. Everything else is alternate timeline or side story or far in the future. Or in the case of Unicorn, like a a direct sequel that was made like 30 years later. So that's sort of like the core of Gundam is those series.
so,
Okay,
so
yeah.
they have
That's-
That's
made.
good to know.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, Zeta Gundam was made in like 86 or so, and Zeta Gundam, again with the Star Trek comparisons, Star Trek, the original series is to Gundam as Star Trek Next Gen is to Zeta Gundam. It was just as well received. Some people preferred it. I think I prefer it personally. And it was considered very strong and still, in terms of TV ratings, one of the highest rated Gundam ever got. Like, just people tuning in and watching.
I see. So I guess it's more fun. But I guess some people
Huh.
say that Gundam has become less serious now. It's just pandering to fans. Do you
Well,
feel?
on that note, the thing is, Gundam has done what a lot of media franchises have done, in which they try and release different parts for different fans. So every so often they have what I'll say is like a serious adaptation, like a serious story. So you have Gundam 00, Gundam Unicorn. There's essentially like 3 different styles of show they're putting out at any one time. There is the alternate universe, completely on its own show that's trying to be serious. There is the various side stories to the Universal Century. There's always one coming out. The most recent one that's coming out is Gundam Hathaway, which actually, Hathaway is one of the kids, the oldest of the kids on the white base, the little kids that they adopted. So there's there's one
Okay.
there's one there's movies coming out about him right now where he's grown up to become a terrorist because of course.
I guess it's like Fate. Like how Bolt got a separate series.
Yeah.
It always comes back to Fate, doesn't it? Or agent.
Well, if a certain someone wills it in such a way, yeah, I guess so.
But there's those two types, and then there's also the stuff that's basically for kids, and that's the Build series right now. And they've been releasing, they only started releasing those around like 2010, and the basic thought process of those is just that in a world where you can build your own Gundam models and then throw them into a video game, and then they fight, only it's like the actual model kit's fighting. And if you lose, your model kit gets partially destroyed, and you got to put it back together.
I mean, isn't this?
And it's basically a sports anime. That's what it is. It's a sports anime,
I mean,
and they use it as a way in order to essentially keep their 2D animators for mecha hired and doing stuff, because that shit is an endangered species now. So it's a way to make sure that there are still some people that know how to do this stuff, as well as just appeal to kids.
does that mean that Gundam mechas usually is 2D anime rather than CGI?
Yes, it's pretty much always 2D animated. This Gundam Hathaway movie, I think, is like the first time they ever did like all 3D. The most, yeah, oof. If they do it pretty well, to be fair, in that. But yeah, like everything else in Gundam always been 2D. The only notable time, like Gundam Unicorn, which started coming out in 2010 and ended in like 2016, the OVA, would sometimes use CGI for the titular Gundam when it was transforming, but other than that, all 2D. That show in particular is like incredibly animated. It is animation born.
I see. So I guess, given that, I guess that there's something for everyone. Like, if people just want a good story or something, they can watch MSG. But if they want the pretty colors as well, the good mech scenes, with good animation, that's that stuff too.
Yes.
I see. I guess earlier you talked about that toy thing, toy Gundam thing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but is it because I guess children are not buying these toys anymore because they're playing video games instead? That's kind of what I felt like, given that you said that they were like playing a video game, but actually uh, the model
Yeah.
kids that are fighting. So
Yeah. I mean, just to be clear, when I was talking earlier, Gundam was designed in a certain way to like make big metal toys for kids, and those didn't actually sell when the TV show was coming out. But later on, just out of happenstance, they made like a licensing thing to pump out little model kits of it, and those became really popular, partially because a lot of World War II modelers at the time thought, hey, these designs really fit in well with our World War II tanks and shit. And so that shit blew
really,
up.
I don't know. I wouldn't have thought that it would get popular among that crowd, given that I guess I thought that they would like. I mean, they still do look like toys, but I don't know.
A little, but it sort of works. But anyways, regardless, yeah, mecha in general is one of those things which has irrevocably fallen by the wayside, because the point of mecha, it pretty much always was children's toy commercial, and it was a background to tell sci-fi stories, but at the same time it was, in terms of like sponsoring a show, and a lot of it was always children's toy commercial. And the last really popular example of that is probably Gal Geiger in like from the Brave series in like the 90s. And ever since then, giant robot shows for kids just aren't that common, and they don't do very well. You did see a slew of mecha shows in the 2000s that were pretty much more adult oriented and didn't have much in the way of toys or anything like that. I probably as a response to Evangelion. But these days there are, well, that's not fair. There are a lot of mecha shows that are coming out this year. Actually, there was that Back Arrow one, which I thought was very good and missed by a lot of people.
What
There's
is it
this
called again?
recent Chokai Senkai Back Arrow.
Okay.
It's starts out a little slow, but it's pretty interesting. It's the same director as from Gurren Lagann, and it definitely has a similar feel in terms of that. It takes place in this area where they've two feuding nations and some people stuck in the middle, and this guy falls down to the ground, as is actually pretty typical. There are usually these capsules that fall to the ground with treasure and whatnot, and it's a person inside this time, and it's prophesied that this person, when he arrives, is going to destroy the world. But he's like this happy-go-lucky guy that doesn't take shit from anyone. That's its own show. But yeah, I really liked that show, and it came out this year, and I thought it was. You'll see if you go back through threads, it was talked about by M&A a little bit, but it was mostly overlooked.
Yeah, I watched it too and agree with what you said there. It was decent in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't perfect by any stretch, but I really liked a lot of what it did, and it was one of those shows that by the end got you really, really hyped.
Yeah.
And like Gurren Lagann, it was constantly like building on top of itself to get more and more insane, and everything. It was just getting more and more powerful.
Yeah. It was very. You definitely see a lot of familiar things in that show with mecha over the years, and it was fun to watch. Yeah.
So
are we going to submit our scores now?
7 out of 10.
Yeah, for like all of them.
No, I'd say. Let's see. 7 out of 10 for the last one. 6 out of 10 for the second one, and 5 out of 10 for the first one.
Yeah, but my scoring is exactly the same.
Good.
Well, all right.
What about you, NPC?
Yeah, I think Heraclius and I might be a bit more generous. Like, my enjoyment of the show was very high, pretty much all throughout. Just as being, such an iconic example within the anime medium. So I really enjoyed what the show was doing, but the technical aspects in this case are a bit more apparent, being as it's older, and really just I think the show could have benefited from a little bit of, like, I don't know, common sense or military knowledge, a little bit more authenticity or a little bit more realism, but just in the way things went about, in the dialogue, in the script, just a lot of little things here and there, really. But it didn't. But overall, like, the core of it was great, and I really enjoyed it. So I think I'm going to be generous and give it an 8. That or a 7.5, but a very strong 7 or an 8. I'm still kind of confused. I'll just say a 7.5.
Crazy. Cool.
Yeah, that's about what I'd put. I would, if we're going this groupings by movies, I would give the final movie an 8.
I think. Yeah, fair enough. I think. I don't think I'm going to forget some of the characters. So that's usually the thing with me.
Yeah.
And
the characters are, very iconic. People have pointed out that Shah Aznable is almost as iconic as Darth Vader.
I guess this was made kind of in a reaction to Star Wars.
2 years afterwards.
Yeah, is he the Darth Vader of anime then?
Sort of, and like it is
Sort of,
actually
yeah.
it is actually a running thing where in most Gundam shows you do have a character that is vaguely similar to Star Ass Snapple show up.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes.
Uh,
B- by the way,
Interesting.
earlier you talked about you said that mecha has become less popular with kids and all that. But
Yes.
what about with otaku, quote unquote? Because if you look at stuff like otaku no video and other stuff like that, there's
Mhm.
always a mecha otaku or something like that.
Yes.
There's always a bunch of model kids lying around when thinking about the stereotypical anime
Yes.
otaku. Whereas now it's more like anime figurines rather than model kits, is
Yes.
it? Um,
Yeah, more or less. I'd agree with you there. Although I'd say the model kits are actually still very popular, and to the point that I'd say they've even expanded in popularity in America in recent years. It's and the outside of East Asia broadly, they're huge in East Asia, like China, everywhere. They're all over the place, like to the point they have a 1-to-1 scale Gundam in Shanghai now.
so would you say that the popularity of the model kits is separate from the popularity of mecha anime then?
To a great extent, yes, yes. The model kits at this point sell themselves on the strengths of their designs almost, and to a great extent, people today buy the kits just because they like the designs rather than because of any connection to a TV series or something they've watched.
I see. So there, I guess this.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Obviously, there are still a fair number of people that buy it because, hey, this is the thing that I saw in the show. But there is also a lot of people that are just, this is a cool design. I want to get it.
So do you think that the anime are made for the people who buy the model kits? Or
Uh,
hmm.
more, yeah, for the most part. For the most part, yes. But the amount of, let's put it this way, most people that are going to watch like a new Gundam show are probably going to be people who have built a few model kits. But the total amount of model kit makers is larger than the amount of people that will tune in for a new Gundam show.
And by the way,
Hmm.
do the model kits extend outside of Gundam, or is it not like 90% Gundam?
It does extend outwards, but it is 90% Gundam. And that's where the vast majority of it is. You do have Bandai's the one that makes the Gundam model kits. You do have other companies make model kits. Kotobukiya, for example, has done stuff. They have their own frame arms goals stuff. They've done stuff for Muv-Luv. They've done stuff for Evangelion. Uh, Quite recently, the same guys that do Nendroids, I forget what their name, but they've actually been doing a lot of niche old mecha designs in model kit form, which is really neat.
Hmm.
But but
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I do have to leave now. It was good as always. But yeah. All right. Yeah.
Right.
I'll see you guys later.
yeah,
Bye.
we should be
Take
wrapping
care.
up anyways. Bye.
Bye. So, by the way, is Tomino still involved with the Gundam anime, or is it, or the designs at least, or is it off out now?
Oh, the designs for the Gundams in the show.
Yeah, and the
Yeah,
stories in
those were.
general, I guess.
Yeah, the designs were done by Kunio Okawara in this show. In in the sequel series, it would be like a whole bunch of different people, mostly not Okawara. You got Kazumi Fujita, Mamoru Nagano, a couple other guys. It was like a smorgasbord of people by the time they got to Zeta. If you're looking at like shows overall, like in terms of like over the course of Gundam, who has designed the most? Kunio Okawara has designed the most. He did most of the designs for the Gundams in the 90s, as well as the designs for Gundam Seed. Although, to be fair, in Gundam Seed, the animators tended to like really thin those designs out and make them look wildly different from the original line art. And then Gundam 00, some of those designs were done by Kanatake Ibakawa, who also did the designs for Full Metal Panic.
By the way, do you know what the inspiration for the designs in MSG were?
I have no idea, to be honest. You can find images of Gundam, of like the original designs, before they refined it down. The Gundam was going to be a lot more white and not this red, white, and blue thing, and was going to be a little bit more like the Gems, not have a human head, more like just a visor. I don't think there was any particular inspiration. You have to keep in mind, super robot shows were very common at this point. Mazinger Z had come out 5 years previous, and these types of giant robot shows were very, very, very common. They were essentially just Saturday morning cartoons for kids, is what they were. And the only thing that was special about Gundam was what was supposed to be a Saturday morning cartoon was made and turned into, from the beginning, a serious war story.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
I actually noticed in the little opening for Gundam, they have all the lyrics of the song in katakana going along, so that kids can like sing along with it. And you don't see that in any other Gundam show, just this. But that is completely. But if you look at like Mazinger Z or Get a Robo, their openings are exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yes, and as you said, apparently this wasn't that popular when it first came out. MSG wasn't that popular, and it was the
No.
compilation movies that saved it or something.
Yes, it was the compilation movies and the model kits. And Tomino talked a little bit about how, for whatever reason, the first people to really get attracted to Gundam were all girls. It was basically he made something that a comment that in initial fan gatherings it was like 90-10 females, something like that. And he basically credited it that in terms of like the slapping and let's say some of the stuff between Mirai and Cameron or stuff like that, it is a little shoujo-esque in terms of that. I don't watch much shoujo, so I wouldn't be the best person to comment on that, but I can see a little bit how there's some commonality, and that might have been that might have caused the attraction there.
Yeah, the drama, right? The character drama and the romance, and yeah, probably a big part of it.
Yeah, I guess the presence of those little kids. The reason why they didn't get rid of them is because they were kind of there to appeal to children, but I guess it didn't really work.
Yeah.
I think. Are there any topics from the ones that you sent that you wanted to discuss that we haven't already?
I guess we can just go over: is Shaw a master planner or an impulsive maniac? What do you think, NBC?
Yeah, see, that's a tough question. Man, master planner or an impulsive maniac. I guess you could say that he definitely has changes to his motivations and his goals over time in the series, and in that sense, yeah, he's kind of, he has these changes of hearts.
Mhm.
Tomino likes to have those in his characters. His characters have change of hearts,
Mhm.
but he's a tough character to pin down between those two things.
Mhm.
To be honest, he's just I just say he's a very goal oriented and driven character that is willing to do all sorts of not so moral things to accomplish those goals.
Yes. Yeah, I'd agree there. I'd probably lean more towards him being an impulsive maniac, because like for example, when he's allied with Caecilia this whole time, he seems to be sincere. He does talk to Sayla about how
Uh-huh.
he's somewhat beyond killing the zombies, that we need to create a world for new types.
Uh-huh.
But then he's like reminded of Sayla at the end. It's like, oh, I'll kill Caecilia now.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
That is very true.
it doesn't seem to have like a final goal of like I don't know, replacing the Zabi and becoming the Emperor himself or something else like that. It's just
No.
pretty impulsive, but he's good at coming up with a plan, I guess, on his feet.
Yeah, I will say, Shaw Aznable as a character is most well liked for his appearance in Zeta Gundam. Like he basically becomes almost like a big brother or something like that to the main protagonist in that show, and people really really like him for that.
And the main
I see.
protagonist of that show is not Amuro, is it?
No, it is Camille Bidon, who is even more of a raging artist than Amuro is.
Oh boy, I can't wait.
Oh,
I'll enjoy it, I'm sure. I'll still enjoy it, I'm sure.
Like episode 1 with Camille Bidon, he acts absolutely nutty.
All right.
Okay, I'll just give like the first 10 minutes. Like he
Okay.
shows up. They're passing by a little military outpost, and one military guy notices his childhood friend calling to Camille, and he goes, "I thought I heard a girl's name, but that kid looks like a boy." And this echoes through Camille's head. That kid looks like a boy. That kid looks like a boy. And he runs up, strides straight up to this military guy at the checkpoint and punches him in the face. and then gets apprehended and detained.
I guess it's a new type too. Must be a thing with them.
Being a new type makes you unable to control your emotions.
Oh, jeez.
I think with that said, we have discussed the movies enough. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think so.
All right then.
Yeah.
Repeat after me. Sig Zion.
Sig Zion.
Sig Zion. Yeah, Sig Zion. You too, NPC. In 3.
Sig Zion.
Okay, in 3. In 3, 2, 1. Sig Zion.
Zion.
Okay, we couldn't do it, but we tried. All right.
Yeah.